Hey, thanks so much for joining. In this video, we're going to automate a desktop application with UiPath Studio X. My name is Thomas and I'm a UiPath Most Valuable Professional. So we're going to start with adding a new process. So click here on New in UiPath Studio X, blank task, and let's call this one MyCRM. Click on Create. And in this video, we're going to automate an application that's a desktop application, so we have to download it. And if you navigate to this website, rpa-unlimited.com, scroll below, navigate to the YouTube example application and course material, click here, and then navigate to this one, UiPath Studio X MyCRM. And if you click here on Open Course Material, you'll find here two files. The first one is the MyCRM application, so I'm going to click here, and I'm going to ask you to do the same. You will see that we get a zip file, click on Show in Folder, and we can then extract this zip. So right mouse click and then extract this folder. You'll see that after the extraction we get this executable. So I'm going to click here on the right mouse click, I'm going to copy this file, and then I'm going to navigate to Documents, UiPath, and then MyCRM. So this is the project. And if you've created a project, you probably see here the name of this project, and that's the folder where you have to navigate to. So let's go back to Windows Explorer, and I'm going to paste here the MyCRM application. Then let's go back to the website, because there is another file that we want to download, and that's an Excel file. So I'm going to click here on Download the Excel file. Then click here on Show in Folder, copy the Excel file. And again, let's navigate back to the MyCRM project, where we also have pasted the MyCRM application, and I'm going to click here on Paste. So let's take a look at this application. I'm going to click here on MyCRM, and I'm going to ask you to do the same. And then you see here that we have a CRM system. It's a fake application, it's not real. So if you change the values and you close the application, you will see that it comes back with the default values. The data that we are going to add, I'm going to just put this application here. Click on the clients.xlsx file. And then you will see here the data that we're going to add. Click on Enable Editing. Okay, so here are the records that we're going to add to this application. You see every person has a first name, a last name, a state. So for example, here you see New York, Washington, etc. An email address and a company name. And these fields, they match with these fields on the application. So you have the first name, last name, you have the state. You have the email address, and let's just use the personal email address. Go to company, then add only here the company name, other, save, OK. Seems like a really easy process. You see that we have more fields in the application, but I don't want you to do double work. I just want to show you how to automate all of the different elements. So for example, a text field, a drop down, etc. And that's why we're not going to change, for example, the address and the city. Okay, let's close MyCRM, and let's also close the Excel file. And let's go back to UiPath. The first thing that I want to do is I'm going to use an use application/browser, this one, and then make sure that you have MyCRM open. So click on MyCRM. Now what is really important is that you don't minimize the application. So don't click here, but we're going to go to UiPath. And that way, in the Windows hierarchy, UiPath will get over the MyCRM application. So if I click here on Indicate Application to Automate, you will immediately see that you can choose between the Windows Explorer, which is still in the background, and the MyCRM application. Click on the MyCRM application to teach UiPath that this is the application that we want to work with. You will see that we get a nice screenshot, and you will as well see that UiPath will automatically put here the application path. So that's the path where it can open, where it can launch the application. You see here project folder, and this as well why it's a very good idea to add the application in the project folder. If you want to go to the project folder, go to project, open project folder, and that way you will directly be redirected to this Windows folder. Then the next thing that I want to do is I want to use Excel, because we want to read from this Excel file. So this is the activity that we're going to need for that. Use Excel file. So drag this Excel in the use application. I will see that if you work more with UiPath Studio X, that the hierarchy is really important. So make sure, again, that you have the use application here in the use application, you put the use Excel file. Then use Excel file, once you have some information, for example, it wants to know the Excel file that we want to use. So click here on this directory icon, browse for file, and then we're going to select this Excel file. Again, by default, UiPath navigates to the project folder. So if you have stored this Excel file anywhere else, you have to navigate to that folder. It's still possible to have the file saved somewhere else, but this is the most easiest way. Click on open. And that's all. UiPath now knows the application that we want to work with, and it also knows with which Excel file we want to work. In the next step, we're gonna teach UiPath how to loop through the rows. And the reason that we have to show this to UiPath, if you go to clients file, you see that we have rows, and all these rows represent different persons that work for different companies. And what we want to do, we want to teach UiPath to loop through all of these rows, except of course the header. This is the header. And for every row, it has to do certain activities. So we are not going to add an activity to add the first name for John, and then another activity to add Jane's first name. We're going to add those activities one time, and then we're going to repeat them for all these persons. And the activity that we're going to need for that is the for each Excel row. So search for each Excel row. And now it's important that you add the for each Excel row in the use Excel file, like this. Again, the hierarchy is really important here. You have seen that this Excel file has headers, and the headers are basically, that's the yellow row with first name, last name, etc. And if you don't select this option, you will see that UiPath will add the header as a client. And you don't want that, right? So click on has headers, in range, plus, Excel. And here we're going to select the worksheet in Excel. You will see that this Excel file only has one worksheet, which is called sheet 1. But you can, of course, also have an Excel file with many different worksheets. Click on sheet 1. Okay, now everything that we're going to put in the for each Excel row, UiPath is going to do for every row in this file. And I will just give you an example of this. So I'm going to add a message box. A message box you can always use if you want to show some information to a person or maybe to yourself while you're developing this robot. So I'm going to click on message box. I'm going to put the message box in the for each Excel row. Then I'm going to click on plus, current row, and let's go for the first name, right? So we're going to show the first name of every person. And I'm saying every person, and that's because this activity is in the for each Excel row. And that means that every activity that you put in there will be done for every person, for every line in Excel. Okay. If you want to run the bot, just click on run. You'll see that UiPath will start compiling. The application was already open, so it's not going to open it again. And then you will see John. I'm going to click on Ock, Jane, Mike, Connie, etc. Okay. So as I mentioned, everything you put in the for each Excel row will be done a number of rows times, so 4 or 5 times. If you want to delete an activity, just click the delete button. And then let's show UiPath what we want to do for every row. I still have the MyCRM application open. And I'm going to start with the first activity. You will see that we start with the first name and the last name. Those are both like input fields. They are both text fields. So I'm going to use the type into activity. Search for type into, like this. Okay, you will see that by default, UiPath will say indicate an app, and you will see here the logo of the MyCRM application. You can also switch to Excel, but the most things that we do in Excel, we don't do with the graphical user interface. We do them by using Excel activities. So that's why in most of the cases you want to go for this one, the application and not Excel. Then UiPath will ask you in which field you want to type. I'm going to click here on the first name, on Oscar, on the field where you can find Oscar. And UiPath will automatically identify a target, which is a green one. So that's where it has to type. And an answer. An answer, that's the blue one. And UiPath will use the answer to identify where it needs to type in case it cannot find the target. So in that case, it will look for first, and it will then type on the right side of first, to say it like that. Click on confirm. And let's now also explain the robot what it has to type. Click on the plus symbol and you will see your current row. If you cannot find current row, and you will see this sometimes maybe in your next robot, that you want to use current row but you cannot find it, then that's because the for each Excel row is not added and you've probably forgotten it, right? So click plus, current row, and in the first name field we also want to type the first name, so click on first name. Then let's now add the second activity, type into, add it here, and click in indicate an app. So the second thing that we want UiPath to type is the last name. So click here. UiPath will automatically also identify the answer. Sometimes it needs a bit of help, but now it finds it automatically. And click on confirm. What we want to type is current row, last name. Okay, now let's take a look at the file. Clients.xlsx. Okay, so the next thing that we want is the state. And you will see here that the state is a drop-down. It's not a text field. So for that, we're going to use a different activity than the type into. And we're going to use the select item, this one. Select item, so drag it below the last name. But again, really important, it should be on the same hierarchy level. So you see that we have type into 2 times, and then we have the select, and they're all still in the for each Excel row. Click and indicate an app, and make sure that the app is open. Sorry for that. Open application. Click indicate an app, and then we're going to click here on state. Click confirm. Okay, now you can do 2 things. You can select here the state that you want UiPath to select. But this doesn't really work, because if we select the state here, it will select the same state for every row that we're going to add. And of course, we want to select the state of the current row. So we're going to click on current row, state. Okay, this is where it becomes a bit more complex. I want one more thing to do. I want to click here on active, and I'm going to ask you to do the same. And for that, there are 2 different possibilities. So first of all, you can use the click activity, and UiPath will click on this field. You can imagine that if someone already clicked on this field, or this field was already active, and you click on it again, you will disable it. And that's why there is another activity. That's the check/uncheck activity, this one. And that's the one that I'm going to use. And the reason that I'm going to do this, here you can select check or uncheck, and it will not invert the status. So in case the box is already being checked, it will uncheck it. But in this case, it will check the status, and it will only perform an action whether in case the status is not as it should be. So the action check or uncheck, that's the desired state. So click on MyCRM, make sure it's in the foreground, indicate an app, and then I'm going to click here on active. Click confirm. And now you can decide whether you want it to be unchecked or checked. If you want it to be unchecked, the robot is not going to do anything because it's already unchecked, as you can see by default. But we are going to go for check, and that way UiPath will make sure that the box is checked. Okay, then this is also a bit more complicated. You see that we're now in the people tab, and we want to change to the company tab. So let's do that, and for that I'm going to use the click activity. Select the click and put it below the check/uncheck. Click on company. You will see that you can select an answer. For now, I'm not going to do this because this selector is already stable. So click confirm. Okay, this is really important because if you don't navigate to the other tab, UiPath can of course not find this text field. And that's the next text field that we want to automate. So I'm going to go for a type into, put it below the click company. And then I'm going to type in this field where we currently see ABC Computers. Click confirm. And what I want to type is current row and of course the company name. And I see that I forgot the email, and my apologies for that. But we can still go back, and then you will see that we can add the email after the state field. So add another type into. Then we have to go back to the people tab, indicate an app, and then I'm going to go for the personal email. confirm. And the field that we want to type is current row email. Okay, we've also done company name here, so that looks really good. Okay, then there are still a few things that we want to do. The robot is now in the company tab. Then we're going to go to the order tab, so that's 1 click. Save, OK, so that's 3 clicks, and then we go back to people. You have to go back to the people tab, because otherwise when the robot starts with adding the next person, it cannot add it, right? So in total we have to add 4 clicks, and we are still in the company tab. So search for click. Make sure to add them on the same level. 1, 2, 3, and 4. Okay, so the first click is going to be on this tab. Confirm. Then again, we have to change to this tab because the robot in the meantime clicked here. And then we're going to let it click on save. That's the next one. Click confirm. And now, of course, because the robot has now clicked on save, we also have to click there. And then in the next click, we're going to click on this message box. Click confirm. And then the last click is you have to click this one away because the robot did that in the meantime, is to go back, navigate back to the people tab. So that's the last click. Click here, click on people, and click on confirm. Now there is one more thing. Now your robot is finalized. I hope you were able to follow me. I think it went quite fast, but you are able to pause and look back. If you go to the use application, MyCRM, you can here on the right side as well identify the properties of this application. So for example, you want to say that after every row, UiPath needs to close it. So you say close is always, and open is also always. And that way you have to make sure, because by default, if you are going to say open, if not open, UiPath is going to, and this one close, you can also put it on if opened by app browser. By default, UiPath will only open the application if it has not been opened yet. So if the application is open like this, UiPath will not open it. I am now going to change this just to show how this works. So I'm going to say open is always and close is also always. If you open it always, you also always have to close it, because otherwise, of course, you will inherit more and more instances of the same MyCRM application. There are more options. For example, if you use a browser, you can click here to make it an incognito screen. You can use specific web browsers. And one thing which is also quite useful is change it from hardware events to simulate. And I'm going to invite you to experiment with that. And that will make the robot a bit faster and also more reliable. Now you've waited long enough. So let's run a robot and let's see if it works. And click on run. This is the end of this video. I really hope it was useful for you. If it was, please give it a thumbs up. Thank you and happy coding.